Hey everybody, this is Carson from Pursuit Hockey Discussion. Just a quick heads up this week. Unfortunately, the front and back half of our video portion got a little messed up because of audio file corruption. But luckily, it was just a couple days ago, and we can repeat it. So we're still gonna go through with our chat here, and we hope you enjoy.
Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of Pursuit Hockey Discussion with your host, Austin Hoey, and my co-host, Carson Johnstone. This week on PhD, we're going to be talking to the Director of Hockey Ops and the coach for the U18 prep program at Crystal Beach Academy. His name is Kevin Rawlick, and he has a lot of insight into kind of the world of prep hockey versus minor hockey or, U18 AAA, as well as the kind of different paths that you can take and the different ways that he recruits and kind of develops his players. We're also going to be joining our favorite topic, the soft white underbelly of junior hockey. We're going to be talking about unsanctioned leagues in the United States, as well as the an interesting score that took place last weekend between the Metro Jets and the Columbus Mavericks. So without further ado, let's get right into the interview with Kevin Rawlick, with the Crystal Beach Academy director and U18 prep head coach. So yeah, Kevin, obviously nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
GM of the School Bombers here, and I've got a pretty good background in player development as well. And when Carson mentioned you coming on the podcast, it was pretty exciting as another guy who's kind of been in hockey development for a while, and really excited to ask you some questions just in general, and kind of give the listeners just kind of what are you up to now in hockey, what's new, what you're currently doing, and what your position is right now within the hockey world.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. And like we said there before we came on air is, there's a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of people that talk about, everything but minor hockey and, the path through it. I think there's a lot of misleading conceptions. And I think at the end of the day, just getting guys on here to talk a little bit about it and understanding the character and the stuff that's important to play at the next level beyond the skills. So appreciate it very much. A little bit about I'm coaching right now, our prep team at Crystal Beach Academy. Also the director here, and this is our first year. We've kind of started something here last summer, and it's taken root, and we're very proud of what it's become. We've got two hockey teams that we're currently running, and hoping to. We're not hoping, but we're adding a girls team next year, and with the same philosophy. Our kids have the options of their schooling. They've got the options there with in person. We've got some online options, but the big thing is taking care of the hockey, but more importantly, taking care of the whole person, is that human synergy. So it's difficult sometimes when you're working in the parameters of somebody else's environment. So we thought we'd give it a shot doing it ourselves here. And you know what? Having professionals around us, guys like Carson and different guys that we work with in the industry, it's really taken root. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And originally from Saskatchewan, and 23 places later, here I am. So I've been coaching for the last 10 to 15 years in AAA midget and prep and U17 in the prep schools. So you know what? I lived in a dorm room when my daughter was moving, and I was a dorm parent in a 10-foot by 12-foot room, and kind of got an understanding of really what our importance is as coaches and as hockey development guys.
Yeah, that's true passion.
It's what we're trying to do here. You got homesick kids. It was important to have tea. It was important to have hot chocolate, because you know what? It's a hard grind for these kids, and giving them the support place is huge.
Yeah. So I guess I know, obviously, Crystal Beach Academy, where it is, being from there. But I guess maybe for the listeners that may not know
How have you found like the area and the reception, just like for the kids? Like what's it like exactly in that area for your academy now, doing that there?
It's been amazing. And honestly, Cars, going back to, at the former school in the area that we were working at, you and I have both previously worked at, and you and I both saw it in this area. We're right across the Niagara River on Lake Erie. So if you're coming across from Buffalo and heading to Toronto, where your first exit and 10 minutes up on the lake is the easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing community. There's the greater Fort Erie area, which has, amazing facilities. It's a good community. It's a community that's welcomed us. We have a fantastic school with Greater Fort Erie Secondary School and their principal, Mr. Lowe's. So that's been an amazing thing. But more, or just as important is where we're stationed. We have Crystal Beach is a town of 8,000 people within that Greater Fort Erie. And it's a special community. It's a community that booms in the summer with tourists, and in the wintertime, it's pretty quiet. And, we want to get more and more involved in the community. We did some fundraising and some different things this year already. But it's a community that is really welcomed us with open arms, and we appreciate everything they've done here. And it was a main reason that, Crystal Beach was Crystal Beach Academy and not somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. It's a great little community on the lake there, and doing a lot of stuff to kind of, I guess, gentrify it is the correct term. You know what I mean? They're making it look new with the old stuff they have there, right? Because it's a bit of an older community down near the lake, but much like, Niagara on the Lake kind of did it near there. They just made it look beautiful and really cool. I was really excited just to see when you were starting the academy there in Crystal Beach, to see how it went, and real happy to see. Obviously, you watch your highlights, you guys have success, and been wins, and wins are one thing, obviously, and like we talked about earlier, more importantly, the whole person. But having success is always an easy way to recruit guys, and guys like winning. So glad to see that, man.
It is. I appreciate that. And you're right. It is. It's ultimately, no matter which way you look at it, there's two things, right? There's one is my son or daughter going to move on to the next level, whatever that level may be. And number two, are you a program that wins, that wins hockey games? In the prep school environment, winning hockey games does open up other doors with, more established schools and things like that. We've been very fortunate here in, my first couple of years, to be honest with you, in Southern Ontario, but even this year with Crystal Beach Academy is playing some of the better, schools here throughout this area and into the US, and being situated on the border, it gives us a 50-50 schedule, both in Canada and the US, which has been really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess I'm kind of leading the charge here, I guess, Austin. I want to let you get a word in here, but just while I'm kind of thinking about it, how have you found like your previous experiences, like being a U18 AAA coach and all those things in Yorkton, like your connections you made through that? How have you found that helped you translate into this and building your schedule and those previous things? Because what we have here, obviously, Saskatchewan U18 is regarded pretty high, Austin, like you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Kevin, you probably know, like a lot of the guys coming out of Saskatchewan are that's the difference, right? Like Southern Ontario versus the West Canada, where you see more of the 17 and 16 mid AAA or U18 AAA versus junior down in Southern Ontario, and just looking to see what your opinion of your time in Yorkton and how you think those U18 AAA programs are out in Sask. We have actually a bunch of guys from Sask in our program this year. We've had some in the past as well, and from the sounds of it, or from what we can see, the Saskatchewan U18 AAA programs produce some pretty good players.
Absolutely.
And just wanted to see from your opinion.
I think the two things that, Saskatchewan's unique in the fact that, geographically, there's only 1 million people there, right? And when you take a look at it, you're spread out, your population spread out outside of Saskatoon and Regina, quite a few different areas of the province. So I think what you have in Saskatchewan is they've done a really good job, Kelly McClintock and his group at Sask Hockey, of working with. We had what was called the Saskatchewan Development Model. And really what it was a partnership between the Western Hockey League, the SJHL, and us. So we would get together once a year in May, with our league meeting, and we would meet, with the WHL, with the SJHL, and there was a mandate there, right? It was a handshake agreement of how we dealt with players, AP players, how those players moved about, ultimately what they're looking for at the next level, and working that out. We worked out showcases with them and did some different things. So when you had your teams outside of Notre Dame and Saskatchewan, those were all Saskatchewan kids, from that area, for the most part. So you had a lot of hometown revenue generation through fundraising, which always helps out. And then the flip side of that is you had an older group, because the SJHL was really is convinced that at 18, 19 is when they should be playing their junior, not at 16, 17. Because the colleges right now, you talk to most of them, unless you're a unique talent, you're not signing till you're 19 or 20. And they don't want to deal with the first girlfriend breakups. And you hear it from their coaches. They don't want to deal with, being away from home for the first time. These colleges want young men that are show up on time, do the right things, and want to be those hockey players, right? And more importantly, they want to be students at the NCAA level. And that was the unique thing in Yorkton. And with that AAA is we had that synergy with the SJHL, but then we also had the synergy with the Western Hockey League. So, we were an older league. We were a lot of 17-year-olds, quite a few 16-year-olds, but then you were sprinkled with 15-year-olds that were basically going to probably play in the Western Hockey League at 16. So, you look at, guys that, Caden Korzak and his brother Ryder Korzak, and Caleb Bullich and his brother Aiden Bullich, right? When you start to look at, these are 4 or 5 year Western Hockey League players. Tanner Janot, that's in Tampa Bay. Tanner didn't play AAA midget at 15, right? He was a non-drafted kid, he out of Estevan, came to us. Jeff Odgers cut him at 15, told Tanner, be a difference, show up in the best shape at any camp you go to, and to give yourself a chance. He's a kid that took it to heart, came back at 16, played a year for us, and then willed his way into the Western Hockey League. So your 15-year-olds in that league are elite. Like, you think of, Dylan Dubé, you look at some of these players that have come through that at 15 in the last few years, pretty incredible. Braden Schneider, so you look at these kids, they, when I was coaching, they're your 15-year-olds, right? And we're in, and that what happens is that becomes the mark. If I'm a parent at home and I don't understand the process, I just know my kid loves playing hockey. He shoots pucks in the backyard. He does everything right. But, he's got to be in the Western League, or he's got to be in AAA at 15.
Yep. So I guess that's a pretty good way to kind of jump into the next thing we were going to kind of ask. So you've seen it now, you coached at this level for so many years. What are the things that begin to separate these players, right, at the U18 level, whether they're 15, 16, 17, or even 18? What are the things that you look for in the prospective players as you recruit, and like, what are the big separators?
The way they treat people would probably be my first one. A lot in the hockey world now, because there's so much video, because there's so much exposure. Now the GMs, now the recruiters are greedy, right? Now they're the biggest skill set they're looking for is they can make them faster. They can make them more responsive. It's tough at 17, 18, 19 to make them a better person.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing that we look for, is that character. And we base it off of the character, the coachability. One of the first things we do when our players get in, they do a little personality test, and it's pretty crazy for the young guys, but they start to understand that even though they all love the game, everybo's different, right? Yeah. So having
yourself,
players,
you can understand your buddy, right?
Oh, absolutely. And having the character kids in the room that understand that is absolutely huge. When you talk to coaches like yourself, Carson, at the next level, if I'm sending you a player for you to take a look at, and he shows up and he's broken curfew 2 nights in a row, and he's disruptive in the room and stuff, pretty soon I lose a voice to you.
Yeah, you
And pretty
can't have
soon you
a
don't listen to
confident
Kevin Rawlick,
conversation about,
right?
where that kid's headed if he's making those decisions. Like, he may be a hell of a player, but the minute he comes here and makes that decision, I'm like, why the hell did Kevin send me that guy?
And then that's it. And now all of a sudden you're closing doors for other players. And I think that's the biggest thing that, they have to understand. So when we're looking for our program, that's the number one thing. We do a 10, 12 question personality, or not personality, but get to know you session during our recruiting calls that lasts almost an hour. And it's huge for them to sit through and understand that. Beyond that, I think, like anybody playing hockey the right way, and what's that mean? Well, it's staying out of the penalty box. It's playing disciplined. It's a game of specialty teams, penalty kill now. So we're looking for guys that are disciplined. We're looking for guys that, have a passion, that want to be hockey players, whether it's through education or going professional. We coach a lot of Europeans that have a lot of doors open for them when they're done here in North America.
Right on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add, I mean, it's one of those things where kids don't really realize it until it starts to actually become real, where they get cut one day. There's a lot of good hockey players nowadays. Everyone can play, everyone can skate, everyone can shoot. It's being a good person really going to bring you further than another guy. If coaches are looking at two guys, they can wrote the same in pretty much most of their attributes, but if the one kid, again, like we said, missed curfew twice, or just as simple as kind of being a shithead to the billet that they're in, or if we have to hear something from a billet about how they don't want to talk, or they aren't respectful at dinner. It's just those small things that kids really don't understand until it actually comes back to bite them.
Yeah, the bigger presence you have in your community, that the more you put yourself out there, the more you get back. Like, that's just anything in life, right? It's yin and yang. So, like, for these kids, don't hold yourself up in your room. Don't be like an introvert. Go bring energy to the rink. If you can't bring skill, if you can't bring all those things, if you're bringing that on already, bring energy, bring more stuff. Like, bring the good stuff that builds everybody else up, right? Not brings everybody down. So I think those are really important, attributes.
Well, we do. It's funny because part of our goal setting is we have 3 that they, process focused goals they want to do on the ice. I'm going to shoot an extra 30 pucks a week, right? As opposed to I want a better shot. Well, we take that same mindset into the life part. So we have guys this year, last year, that their goal is they're going to introduce themselves to one new person a week, right?
Nice.
And you ask a guy, hey, have you met anybody this week? No. Well, here, let's meet this person. And they start to get but it is, and I think that's our role, because we're still with minor hockey, but that's our role, is to make sure that they're ready for all those little things, because when we hand them off to you, your environment is more about wins. Your environment is more about making playoffs, putting people in the stands. And for you need those same sort of people to do it. Yeah. So it's very important to move guys on with those aspects, as opposed to, well, he's a good skater, but he'll get better. Or he'll, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that kind of is a good way to go to the next one too.
I mean, we were talking, we were just having this discussion with, a couple of, we're on the younger side, obviously, but we've got some assistant coaches that are a little bit, been in the game a little bit longer than us. And what interesting to talk about, like, what are some differences you see in hockey player development now versus when, you were even coaching at a higher level, just like not even 10 years ago? It's changed a lot.
I would
agree.
It has. And I think we've gone through kind of a little bit of a paradigm shift in a lot of ways. There's, when I always said, you had to teach a player kind of, what's in it for him. And then it was, what's in it for him that's going to benefit his team. And now it's, trying to what's going to benefit the family, that's going to benefit the team. And that progression, I think, is been a paradigm shift from, when I grew up, and even before that, coaches were very demanding. It was a black and white world. But at the same time, the best ones, the ones that were having the most success, were still doing what we see today. They were still building relationships. They were, you go back and you listen to the 80s and you listen to why the Islanders were so good, or you listen to why the Oilers had their dynasty. And they got along. They were brothers, right? Now, has it changed a bit? Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think not only the opportunities that these young men have, but I think the game's changed in that aspect. And I think it's the expectations of the game that have changed, right? When we grew up, it was a good place for the kids to be babysat and have some fun and be part of something. And then it became a contract world, right? And then it was the parents saying, okay, well, you know what? Maybe little Johnny's not going to make the NHL, but at least he'll get his schooling. Well, we're setting expectations, right? And when you have millions of kids playing and thousands of scholarships, if you're putting your focus in on that end result, and that's, I think, a lot of what's happened with the game, is you end up being disappointed and not enjoying the journey right through it. The flip side of that is I think from a human standpoint and a young man or a young woman standpoint, I think you've seen a huge shift in the last 10 years, right? I've seen, whether it's professional organizations or teams saying, okay, these even at the cost of winning, it's not right to treat people like this, right? It's not right to do this. And then you've gone from that, you've gone to a really skills development sort of era, right? You look at Woodcroft in Edmonton, right? A skills guy, a guy that's going to create, and creates great players, right? Creates skilled hockey players. But at the end of the day, you look at the teams that are still winning Stanley Cups. You look at the teams that are winning national championships, whether it's junior, whether it's NCAA, whether it's U Sport, right? It's the culture. Why is UNB so successful in women's hockey? Why are they so successful? Right? You start to look at this and it's culture, right? Yeah. And once you create culture, then people want to come to the culture, right? And we hear it more times from parents. I think we're at a point now where culture's outweighed the wins, right? If little Johnny, little Susie leaves the program 2 years or 3 years, they became, more mature, more responsible, and they still love the game. I think that's what people are looking for. And because of that, I think we're more aware of differences. I think we're more aware of that. And I think it's probably the biggest change in the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I mean, I think just in terms of that, I mean, there's lots of ways to look at it. And I think one of those biggest things, too, you kind of touched on it, was coaches just used to tell players what to do, and now it's you got to have a little bit more of a why. You always have to be able to answer the why. Why are you doing something? And I think that's made everyone better, honestly.
It does. Right? Oh, it does. It holds us accountable, right? There's some accountability on our end. Is saying, okay, Mark Habscheid he used to coach PA Raiders, and he always does a great speech about leadership, and he talks about adapt or die as a coach. Right? Adapt to the cell phones, adapt to the technology, adapt to these different situations, become a better coach because of it.
Yeah. And that's the best way to look at it, for sure, is us as coaches and people that are influencers. At the end of the day, it's the way you look at it, right? Like, we influence hundreds of kids. What you coach hockey for 4 years, you could potentially coach 100 different kids there, and like, that's, if you do your job right, all those kids should leave with something that you've taught them that they can, implement in their lives and make them better. I guess that's what I feel as a coach. Hockey's one thing, but guess what? You talk to 100 different guys in hockey, the end result of what they're trying to accomplish is probably going to be pretty damn similar. You know what I mean? Like, systematically and stuff. Like, sure, there's little tweaks in that, but what you can actually offer as a coach goes far beyond X's and O's. It's more about, these relationships and stuff. And, you see it on your website too, CBA. Like, you mentioned those guys like Korzak and Janot and those guys, but obviously you had good relationships with them, right? To stay in contact with them. So that means something, man. It means you did a good job, obviously.
Well, I appreciate that. And you know what? When you're a young coach and a guy that's played, and then you become a coach and you're around those kids, you start to understand what's important. Living in the dorms, you start to understand it. But you know what? I see it with, like, we sat down there for 10 minutes. That turned into an hour when you and I first sat down, and I can see that in you, right? And you see that passion about making, better young men. So, and I'm selfish with it. So, before Christmas, I call Caden and Ryder and I say, listen, want you guys to do a couple week, back-to-back session, just question and answer with the boys, right? Both of them called in. They're one's in the AHL, one's in the NHL. They got busy schedules, but they always give back. And
awesome.
You know what? Tanner, a year ago when his baby was born, did a speech to the boys, burping his baby. And it's important that these guys see these guys in those lights. I've got two brothers that fantastic hockey players that are started a farming business now and doing very, very well with that. And they've taken that from the game, and the relationship with them is still absolutely huge. Dave King always said, if young guys don't know who Dave King is, I strongly suggest to look up Dave King. But Dave King always said he measures his success with his hockey players based off how many wedding invitations he gets.
Yeah.
And I think if you guys, and I know, Austin, I don't know you as well, Carson. I know you very well. I'd like to think in your character, keep that in mind as you guys move forward. And if you coach off of that mindset, and it's one, even today, I was very challenged and very frustrating game to coach involved in. And at the end of the day, that's what you got to remember. There's always got to be a teaching moment in every situation.
Yep. So I guess that's awesome. We talked lots about coaching and stuff. And I think we could go a little bit back to that if we'd like, but I'm curious too, like, obviously we talked about your pathway a little bit, kind of coaching and stuff, but you played at Mercyhurst and stuff. And what was that like for you back then, playing junior and getting to college, and what did that look like for you? Because today it could even look a lot different. So,
it was neat. I look back on it, and you know what? Junior hockey, back then was more of the only ticket in town, if you will. So for us to have, 800, 1,200 fans, and probably a good environment like you guys have up there, but you've got a passionate community. Costs aren't as expensive back then. Ice time's not as expensive. There isn't as many different options out there for people. So the junior hockey was really fun. I enjoyed playing it. I was telling the guys today, no chirping, enough of that, you take your loss kind of like a man sort of situation. But you think in hindsight, if there was a game that was 2-3 goals spread out, there wasn't too many guys that were finishing those games.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're always looking to send a message. Now, that being said, I played pretty much 3 years of junior with one organization, in Estevan, and our GM at the time was a legend. With Bill Shinsky was his name, and Bill was part of the New Westminster Bruins with Punch Imlock and just different different organizations, but an older gentleman that was absolutely all in when it came to hockey. And he, playing for him in Estevan was a lot of fun. As a 20-year-old, I got traded at the deadline to an older team that was making a playoff run. So I never won a championship in junior, but got to play in a 6-game best, championship series and lost. But it was a lot of fun. During that process and just being part of a team, we got an opportunity to go to Mercyhurst. And you know what? It was 4 years for a kid from Saskatchewan living on the Great Lakes. I met my wife there. I have lifelong friends there. Football guys, tennis guys, non-sports guys. It was a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed probably the education part, going to college, starting to understand what your interests are, right? And so it goes back into the coaching. We talk to these guys, we set goals, we talk to them about what their likes and dislikes are with that. Because I got to Mercyhurst and I had no idea what I wanted to do outside of hockey.
As most guys,
Yeah, I remember when I'll finish that but yeah, when I left Mercyhurst, I had no idea, so I decided to go play.
Yeah.
And I went down to Baton Rouge and played. Started off in the East Coast there with camp and some exhibition games, and eventually it's a good hockey league, and guys kind of get sent down, and before you know it, you're in the you're in the minor league spiral.
Yeah.
And I played with Jerome Bichard, who was kind of a hero to me growing up in Columbus with the Cottonmouths in the Central League, and then had some few practices in that with a team called the Macon Whoopie, and ended up in the Western Pro League with the San Angelo Outlaws. And you know what? It was an amazing journey. Everything that I have in the game, or that I have in life, I've gained through the game. I'm always approached it from that aspect of what, I just love being around the rink. I love being around it. I went into IT for 17 years. I had an IT consulting company. Loved it. Loved our staff. Loved our team there. But it's, you get your thrill there. So
Yeah,
that was kind of my story, kind of growing up there through hockey. And I always tell the guys, you know what, as long as you enjoy loving it, keep chasing it. Right.
Yeah, man.
Because it's a unique experience.
Oh, thanks for sitting down with us, Kevin.
Yeah,
it was really, really appreciated. And would like to have you back on at some point, maybe in the future. And
for sure, man. There's so much we can't get to, right, in just a short amount of time here. But appreciate you just kind of giving us your perspective, and we get to shed some light on why you do what you do. Your experiences and just the things that are important to you, and doing a good job there at Crystal Beach. So really, really appreciate you coming on with us, man.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me, and got to be honest, a little nervous being the inaugural guest here. So yeah. We're going into, we got a month left here. We've got a showcase this weekend, and then a few weeks off, and then our leagues. And so we're heavy into recruiting and stuff right now, but would love to touch base with you guys again. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot that, like I said at the start there, I think it's great what you guys are doing. There's a lot to talk about with minor hockey, and just setting the perspective for everybody. And you know what, enjoying the process, because ultimately at the end of the day, they want to come play for organizations like yourself, going forward. So
thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you guys. Take care. Great
much.
job. Talk soon.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
All right. Well, that was a fantastic interview with Kevin Rawlick. We thank him for coming on the podcast, and we look forward to possibly getting him on again. I think that would be pretty beneficial. I'm hoping that you guys enjoyed that interview as much as we did. But with that being said, we're going to move into everyone's favorite topic. Even though we're only 2 episodes in, it's everyone's favorite topic. It's my favorite topic.
Already, it's got to be.
Is the soft white underbelly of junior hockey. And this week we wanted to talk about unsanctioned junior in the United States as opposed to Canada. Last week we talked about a little bit about the GMHL and the NJHL and the GMHL West in Canada. And this year this week we want to talk about kind of their mirror or their sisters in the USPHL in the States. And the way that and the reason that we're talking
Can I say something before we go further on that?
For sure.
As much as they are like we'll call them sisters or sister leagues or whatever. Cousins. Yeah, you know what? Perfect. Call it cousins, because they're similar enough, but there are differences, like,
no one would argue that the USPHL is not run better than.
That's basically what I'm trying to get at here with I don't know, not articulating in the best way possible, but yeah, I just want to outline that I think the USPHL does try to do a little bit better of a job from what I can see on my end.
They offer a consistent league, and while their teams come in and out pretty frequently, it's not like and we're going to get to this. It's not like 9-player rosters.
Yeah.
And I think this is the complete flip of that. And we're going to talk
why it's also bad.
We're going to talk about why that's bad. So obviously the reason that we're talking about this week is because I'm sure most people who are listening to this podcast are aware of the absolute pounding that the Columbus Mavericks USPHL Premier team took at the hands of the USPHL Premier Metro Jets, 37-1. Now, we wanted to talk about that, but I want to preface it with a couple of things. So if you're not familiar with the USPHL, if you're more of somebody who you really only follows the CJHL, whether it be the MJ or the SI or the AJ up here in Canada, the USPHL is a unsanctioned junior league in the States, and it's tiered in its own way. Because it's not sanctioned, it's not under USA Hockey. So that means that rather than have a feeder system to the NOL, the North American Hockey League, or the USHL, the United States Hockey League, which are the two more premier junior leagues in the States, they have their own tier system. So the way that it works is they have the NCDC, the National Collegiate Development Conference. Then they have the USPHL Premier, and then they have the USPHL Elite. So the way that it kind of works is the USPHL Elite feeds the Premier teams, and then the Premier teams feed the NCDC teams. Now, we're no stranger to the fact that, junior hockey these days costs money. Most programs outside of Tier 1 and only a couple Tier 2 programs basically don't charge players to play. But how the USPHL gets around that, because they've kind of deemed their NCDC league or their tier as Tier 1 Junior A, because they do not charge player fees.
Yeah, so they think it can be, I guess, on the same plane as those other leagues. And, to make that argument, more players nowadays do want to play where it's cheaper or free, right? So, I mean, providing that option is a good idea. And I think we talked about this, the other night as well. But it's a good idea, but it just, when it falls on the backs of these other players and all these other teams that we're going to get to here, like, and why it's bad, it ends up being a tough place to sell.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of how it works, right? Is you have these USPHL elite players charged in the range of, probably $85,000 to $9,000 plus billets to play.
US dollars.
US dollars. Plus, then you have the Premier players who are paying in and around, from what I can tell, $65,000 to $7,000 plus billets US. And then you have the NCDC teams who, at the very most, are just paying billets. So that's kind of the dichotomy of those three tiers. Mm-hmm. Now, where that becomes a little bit sketchy is you have the fact that the USPHL Elite and the USPHL Premier will boast, there's 61 teams in the Prem, and there are 37 teams in the Elite division. Now, those teams are stretched across the states, and you're really only playing within your division. So even though the Premier boasts 61 teams, you're only really playing your 8 teams in your division. So if you're in the Atlantic division, you're only playing against Connecticut, Wilkes-Barre, Hershey, PAL, Elmira, the Rockets, Jersey, and Brooklyn. And then that kind of goes from there. So you're really only playing, you're almost in a league within a league almost.
Yes.
You're never doing inter-division travel.
The USPHL is like the CJHL, that umbrella.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good way to put it, actually, because now you have the winners of those leagues advancing to the national championship, and then they play the winners of the other leagues.
Yep.
So what ends up happening is you have these feeder teams that are paying a bunch of money, and realistically, unfortunately, a lot of the times that money is not necessarily invested back into the program that you're playing for. It's moving up the ladder, and it's going to, if you're in the elite team, probably going to help a little bit of the Premier, and then it's going to help, most of it is going to the NCDC programs. Because the NCDC programs are, again, ice time is expensive. Coaches are expensive. All these amenities that the players are receiving at the NCDC level.
Yeah, what it takes expensive to run an organization at that level, right? That's
sure.
Free to play with, skills coaches and video coaches and all the things that they boast.
It
costs a lot of money.
Realistically, for a Tier 2 junior team, like, you're looking at $350,000 to $400,000 to run a team for
just operation.
And that's like probably on the like mid to lower tier in terms of what it costs. Now, when you're an elite team and you have players that are playing, you're only practicing 2 to 3 times a week, and you're playing at 11 o'clock on Tuesday, that ice time is going to be much less expensive. And you're not, you're not getting the scouts to your games. You're not getting the exposure that the NCDC guys or even the Prem guys are getting. The other thing that comes forward with that is you have these teams that because it's unsanctioned, there is no limit on your roster size. Yeah. So if you look at a league, just to compare in the States, you have the North American Hockey League. They have their feeder league, which is the North American 3 Hockey League. So that's classified
also Tier 3.
Classified as Tier 3. So they have sanctions under USA Hockey. They can only have their 20 rostered players for a game, and then you can have 3 extra on your roster at any time. CJ is very similar. 20 rostered players, 5 scratches at a time. In the USPHL, it's not the case. You can dress 26 guys if you want.
Yeah,
you can dress 30 guys if you want. You can dress 3 or 4 goalies if you want. So what I did here was I just took a look and to see just some of the more bottom teams in the USPHL Elite, just looking at a couple of their rosters. So, for instance, We have the, I'm going to screw this up, and I apologize to any of the players on this team, but the Decatur Blaze. So they are
Decatur, I think.
Decatur.
That's what I'm going to go with.
They're like 138-1 this year. They have on their roster right now 12 defensemen, 3 goalies, and 20 forwards registered on their team. Now, I don't necessarily know, like the game sheets are going to tell you, but also a big thing now, we've talked about social media and stuff. There's lots of guys who have vlogs and all that kind of stuff, and they'll show their games. And there's a couple of guys who have shown their games, and it's like, oh yeah, had a good game tonight. I only got 1 shift. It's like, how they only get 1 shift? And you go and look at the game sheet, and there's 15 forwards, 8 defensemen, and 3 goalies. And that one line, that 5th line, how many shifts that 5th line getting? It's hard enough to get 4 lines into a game.
It's really tough, man. Like, and from my perspective, I was talking, to some of my players about it today, actually, at practice. And I was like, hey, man, like, don't lose your confidence, because he's been playing a 4th line role. Not even not playing, like playing a 4th line role and scratched just a couple times throughout the year. And like, it's tough. It's tough because these kids all want to play. Like, for a kid's confidence, sitting on the bench and playing 1 shift, like, it's bad enough when we look at the TPE, which is like our breakdown method thing for our statistics after games. And we look and guys it's like, oh man, I only played that guy 5 minutes last night or 6 minutes. And that's almost embarrassing to me as a coach, because you don't want to do that. You want to give guys opportunity. And a roster of 26 or 32 in that team's case, 35 with goalies.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Like, that's how are you giving kids true opportunity that way? It takes a special guy to like, really, really buy in and truly add something to your program with energy and bring in all that stuff that it takes to be a good guy, like we talked about with Kevin, right? Like that takes a special player to say what your culture is, with a roster size of 35. I wonder. I'd be curious to take a peek inside and just see exactly what that looks like with the players.
Exactly. And then you go up the ladder and you can look at the premier teams, the USPHL Premier. Some of these aren't the premier teams in that not to use premier, but these aren't the top teams in that league. These are like the bottom feeder teams.
Yeah.
And these guys are routinely dressing 15 skaters. So you look at the Elmira, the Elmira Impact. So they have only 15 forwards registered, but they have 14 defensemen and they have 4 goalies.
Yeah.
And they have 1 win. So it's like, obviously,
who's developing?
Yeah. Who's getting the puck? Like, obviously your team's not doing very well. Obviously, the players that you have aren't the answer here. Like, what's going on with these 14 defensemen? Like,
well, maybe they have that many guys so they can just inter-scrimmage all the time. Inter-squad games.
They got a lot of cream soda cups going on in Elmira.
Green versus white.
Yeah, a lot of inter-squad battles at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday. But, like, that's unfortunately the issue. So, with that being said, if we're going to transition over to this Columbus Mavericks Metro Jets situation.
Yes.
So we have the Metro Jets, who are a perennial, almost, I want to say, powerhouse in the USPHL. They run a very good program. And this is something that I don't want to stray away from, because we mentioned this last week. Even if you're in an unsanctioned league, we're always going to come back to that statement of, what do you offer as a program?
Yes.
What are you doing for your players to develop them? What are you doing to help them become better individuals? What are you doing to help them become better hockey players?
I lied to you the other day.
What's that?
When I told you I went to that Michigan pre-draft,
yeah,
and I said there was not 1 hockey player there,
yeah,
I lied. There was 1 hockey player,
yeah,
and I was like, oh, who's this kid? And it was a Metro Jets player.
There you go.
So that's actually funny that we're talking. So I lied to you. I exaggerated. There was 1 guy I was interested in.
And fair enough. And I mean, and you can see consistently their social media, they get really good engagement, and they just, for the most part, develop pretty solid hockey players. And I bet you if we look at their advancements, they probably have a decent amount of Div 3 guys. They probably have a decent amount of ACHA Div 1 guys.
Yeah, I wonder. I'd be curious.
I would have to imagine, right? And that's realistically what the USPHL is trying to do, is they're trying to send guys off to be that pipeline for Div 3. That's essentially what they're doing.
Yep. And I think actually they've done a pretty good job doing that. A lot of programs, a few of them. And you know what? Even it's funny that the Mavericks are on the opposite end of this spectrum here, because just a couple years ago, like Tyler Isherwood and a couple guys I know played in that program. Good players. Tyler's playing in the OJ right now with the Buffalo Junior Sabres, doing really well. He played for me at FIA. So You know, it's I don't know I don't think it's Nate coaching there anymore. I don't know who it is. I think his statement's out on Facebook, but we'll get to that. But
Joey Rechtenwald.
yes, so not the same guy there, but anyways, I was a little shocked to see obviously the score in any case, but then to see Columbus on the other side of it, I was even more shocked.
And that's the thing then, that just want to make sure that we're stressing throughout this is that it's not the league you play in, it's not the player that you are, it's what that program is offering you. So
yeah.
Now to go into this game here, we have the Columbus Mavericks, who by all accounts are not having a good year. If we're going to talk about
you said that far too seriously. I'm sorry.
If we're going to talk about, what you're doing for a program, and then if we look at the players, so they have 12 defensemen on their roster.
Yeah.
And they have 4 goalies on their roster. Actually, they have, like boys were saying, Red Lake's own Callan Cook. So good for
nice
Northwestern Ontario
boy
representation there. And then they have
thumbs up, let's go.
4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 forwards. So we're going on 30 skaters and 4 goalies. That's 34 players on your team. I don't think we've gone through 34 players this year in terms of
with the injuries we had just today, this morning in practice. I don't know if I had 18 skaters, maybe just.
Yeah, seriously.
18 forwards is insane.
That's
how do you run a practice?
I honestly don't know. So that begs the question. Now you look at now that you go to this box score between and now we're going to talk about this 37-1 game.
Coach Chippy, absolute pounding.
Absolute pounding. No. So I'm on the game sheet. 37-1. The shots were 83-9 in favor of Metro, and
well, definitely wasn't Columbus.
It literally couldn't be Columbus. Now I want to bring up a couple of interesting things. So a couple of guys two guys had 13 points for Metro. One guy had 12. That's a good night.
Yeah.
This is something that we didn't bring up last time that I think is absolutely, utterly fucking hilarious. Is Metro had 105 points added to their fucking scores.
Holy fuck.
Almost every goal had 2 assists, which is insane. And Columbus had 2 points. Now, the funniest part, which you talked about last time, was the one penalty that got called in this game.
That's my favorite part of the game sheet, is the tripping penalty with 5 minutes left in the game to Columbus. To Columbus. The ref had to kick them when they were down. What was the score? And did they score on the ensuing power play? I'd have to.
Yeah. The Peeper was 1-for-1 for Metro that night. So going into that power play, the score was 34-1. And then finished 37-1.
Oh, man. The wheels fell off after the PP there.
And then, so again, you kind of start to look at it here, right? And it's, okay, this is not great. And then one of the things that really came out to me when I first looked at this score sheet was, number one, the Metro Jets goaltender had a less than 900 save percentage, so tough night for Carson McKenzie. But, I mean, that's tough to say in a game, 9 shots.
Yeah.
The other big thing here is that Columbus had 3 goalies play in this game, which is absolutely unheard of. Like, maybe that doesn't sound like something that's crazy to think about from an outsider's perspective, but this isn't like an e-bug situation. This is legitimately like, this guy's on their roster, and they had 3 goalies dressed, and they decided to play all 3 of them.
Yeah, it's different in college and prep when you get kids that are there for 4 years, and like you get a freshman or something, like they get them on the bench. Like I've seen teams dress 3 goalies in other situations. Not always playing them. That very rarely, if ever, I've seen that. I don't know. Maybe in exhibitions where you like split games and stuff, but in a regular season game playing 3 goalies, I mean, well, I think they tried to give them a period each by the minutes.
So their starter got 22:57. Then they brought another guy in. He played the end of the second, and then that wasn't good enough. So then they brought the third guy in for the third.
Right on.
So, what I want to highlight with this is, again, it's unfortunately, or it's very funny. number one. 37-1 is pretty.
It's comical. It is. It's nothing but that. Like it's so comical that it's in now resulted in multiple statements that are also hilarious in themselves, and we'll talk about why.
Yeah.
So I think we can just go right there.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into both of the statements, as directed by the Metro Jets and the Columbus Mavericks. So I'm gonna grab my phone.
Yep.
What I want to, I guess, before we talk about this is we kind of touched on, it doesn't necessarily matter the league, it just matters what your program is doing. And I think I brought up a pretty good point last time in that a lot of teams, and we've mentioned this, and I want to talk about it just a little bit before we kind of continue on with this point, is a lot of teams, unfortunately, it's the base or the thesis of what I'm trying to say here is it's very important to do your research when you're being recruited by teams.
Yeah.
What this boils down to is these teams are basically opening the door to everybody because anyone who can sign a check, basically.
Yeah.
And they're saying, hey, come and play for us, play junior. It'll be fun. Come and play junior, play junior, play junior, play junior.
Yeah.
They're not really, what's the return on investment of my $8,000? What's the return on investment of coming to this program?
And you know what? It's sometimes too, I feel like you can be easily duped because it's like, well, we have ice time, we have this, we have that, but it's like if there's never a coach on the ice and it's just ice and like the kids are out there by themselves, like what are they truly getting out of that? So it's like you do have to kind of ask the right questions, right, about programs.
Exactly. And it's unfortunate. And again, you get a league of 61 teams or 37 teams. It's just the fact of life is that you're going to get some programs and some owners that are going to, for lack of a better term, min-max on the player fees. And what I mean by that is we're going to figure out the number we can charge the most amount of for the least amount of return. And then you're going to get the programs that are going to charge the least amount for the most return.
Yes.
And it's very easy to just go in and say, okay, we can charge these players $8,000. We can give them 3 practices a week. We can give them a sweater, a shirt, and a pair of shorts, a pair of gloves they have to give back at the end of the year, and a helmet they have to give back at the end of the year.
I don't even know if that happens there.
Right.
I think they might have to buy their own gear.
Maybe. And then that's even on top of the player fees, too, right? It's like, this is your $300 apparel fee, and this is your $300 equipment fee. That definitely happens there as well. And at that point, now it's like, okay, yeah, for sure. Some of that money's going up the chain to the NCDC. Some of that money's going up the chain to the Prem if you're in the elite.
Yeah.
But a lot of that money is going directly into the owner's pockets, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And this isn't to call Columbus and say they're doing that. This isn't to call the Metro Jets and say that they're doing that, because I don't know. But that definitely exists
within this league.
Yeah, within every league.
That's within every league, actually. Yeah, like we just said, but certainly that's how situations like this can happen, right? Because you see, let's talk about the statements, because that's kind of where we're headed with this. So the first statement from the Metro Jets, for me to summarize, Austin, you can read it, but I'll just quickly, synopsis here. He basically just says they heard that Columbus wasn't trying, or they had heard their coaches told them not to try and prepare for an upcoming game. Turned out to be false. But here's the statement anyway, but I just want it to be known beforehand. This turned out to be false, and we'll follow up with that after.
So, yeah, this is the statement from the Metro Jets coach. It was brought to our attention that players on the opposing team were instructed to not try or compete because they have to conserve for an upcoming game that is more important to them in the standings. We take pride in scheduling the most difficult opponents and finding opportunities to teach in every game. We are not embarrassed by today's events, and we spoke to our players and staff about everything afterwards. We take what we do seriously, and if other teams or players on our schedule don't, that's their choice. Our recent stretch of showcases and divisional games have been great matchups. This game, Columbus opted to protect their players. Therefore, I am protecting ours by letting everyone know the truth. Seeing their players not even make an attempt to play is wrong. To joke around is wrong, regardless of their motives. Hopefully, Columbus made an effort to get home safely at least. Now, that statement is, again, this is something that you've said to our guys, and this is something that you've said to players, is it doesn't take skill to play defense.
No.
And I don't care who you are, 37 goals should never go in your net.
That is a lack of effort. It is. It's just like that's what it boils down to, because if you look at the other games they've played this year, not great scores, 17-1, 15-1, 14-0, 14-1, I believe, something to that
there was even a 5-0
effect.
Loss. So obviously they're playing defense in that game.
There was a 5-0 loss. So how do you go from 5-0 to a 32 goal differential. Like that doesn't happen. So obvious lack of effort. So I mean, not totally far fetched for this coach to think that or feel that, right?
Yeah.
Given their past experiences. However, following that statement that they released, Columbus is, what was his name? Joe or
Jeff.
Jeff. My apologies, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. Joey Rochtenwald.
So it was Joey.
It was Joey.
So Joey had this to say.
Yeah. So this is the official statement from the Columbus Mavericks. I was not going to make a statement regarding Friday's game against Metro, but the patently false, defamatory, and irresponsible public statements made by the Metro Jets coaching staff made it necessary to clear the air. Honest effort is a core value of our program and has been since day one, whether we are the best team on the ice or not, whether we're 10 goals ahead or 10 goals behind. We teach our guys to never quit on each other and to play with class and sportsmanship. And we stress the value at every practice, training session, and game. This mission of our program is to develop strong hockey players and, more importantly, young men of character. The claims of the Metro Jets coaching staff that we intentionally chose to throw the game to somehow benefit us later in the season are baseless and offensive. I'm not interested in engaging in a back-and-forth smear campaign, so instead, I chose to share the live barn video of our practice on February 14th, 2024, 2 days prior to this game, when I personally addressed the lack of effort and reinforced the need to give 110% regardless of the upcoming opponent. While I wish the Metro Jets would have taken a more professional approach to Friday's game, ultimately they have the right to compete however they see fit and should honestly stand behind their decision rather than creating a false narrative. Additionally, making a comment which has since been redacted, hoping we put an effort into getting home before we embarked on a 200-mile trip through a snowstorm was uncalled for and classless. Every parent in junior hockey dreads these trips in inclement weather after the tragic incident in Humboldt. Statements such as this should never be met with praise or acceptance.
Yeah, and I will share the video here.
4 o'clock, we're going to be playing. So everybody that was coming close to your practice, I'm going to play. You want to get coming close, say, I don't want to play Metro, that's fine. You play Friday and Saturday, you won't play Monday and Cincinnati. With honest effort here, we have open competition. Everyone's going 110% the whole time. I'll set the line. I don't pick the line. I can see you going hard, I write it down. You're going to say that? You guys pick the line. You want to come in close? Don't play. Okay. You think you want to come in close because you're afraid to play Metro? If I were to tell you guys saying that, like, hey, that's fine. It's like Friday, Saturday, 30 minutes of the game. You won't dress on Monday. Everybody get that? Yeah. All right. Betty, what warm-up you want?
All right. So clearly from the video, and you know, there's obviously text in the video if you're watching YouTube. You can see that he's telling his players he's not going to accept anything less than 110% effort. Talking about how if they don't try against Metro this upcoming weekend, they won't play against Cincinnati. It's just how it is, this, that. And it's good. It sounds like a good message, you know, from a coach, but you can tell there's something just not clicking there as the players don't necessarily have an enthusiastic response. So, I mean, you could tell something was going on, obviously, and they didn't seem too enthusiastic about their upcoming opponent that's obviously wiped the floor with them before. So, you know, tough situation headed in. We've all been there as coaches. You're heading into a tough game. It's like, oh, man. You know, as coaches and players, and it's tough. It's tough to stay, elevated to still compete when you just ultimately kind of know what's going to happen.
Unfortunately, I mean, you can say what you want about defensive effort, and 100%. It doesn't take any skill to play defense. It just takes effort. But, you know, most people can honestly kind of, the game is pretty much 85 to 90% decided before the teams even step off a bus to get into the rink.
Yeah.
In that situation, right? In that situation, it's going to happen. But at the same time, like, it does speak to, you know, making sure your guys are working hard.
Well, it could have been 15-1 again.
100%.
Like, so that's, I guess, where obviously the coach of Metro is like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, because that doesn't happen. That's 32 goals. That's insane. So that's flat out what that is. So anyways, now what this has caused for that league too, it's a bad look. It's a bad look for the USPHL Premier. I'm sure they don't love the fact that we're talking about it or anyone's talking about it, but everyone's talking about it. So we are too. But like, it's a bad look. Now, Metro, probably not the greatest call just to make that statement, whether they were frustrated by that or not, because they work hard to provide a good program, right? Yeah. So they're probably frustrated by feeling that way. But, you know, ultimately now what this has caused with proof from the other side kind of makes them look bad. And, you know, Columbus also looks terrible 100%. As well. Like,
I mean, just to take Metro side here for a second, like we talk about, the min-max on player fees, and okay, I don't know what Metro charges their players. I don't know any Metro players. I don't really know, but they're obviously trying to run a good program. They've had a good program going on now for a number of years. So you have to realistically think that, they probably are not making, and I think it's, we said this last time we actually had it, the one that unfortunately got corrupted.
Mhm.
You see a pretty big, correlation between the teams that are consistently doing well and, their community support and how they are looking at it not necessarily as a money-making situation, where they're looking at it as more of a
Where are they moving their players?
yeah, exactly.
How are they helping the people within their organization? Coaches, players,
Exactly.
everything.
And from a Metro standpoint, a 37-1 game is not pulling players into their league. It's number one. Number two, it's not pulling people into the stands. So there apparently were 47 people at this game. Whether or not those 47, I don't think those 47 people, whether they were parents or girlfriends or whoever, got their money's worth out of this, realistically. And it's one more thing for.
I hope their eyes weren't sensitive to red light.
Couple of sunburns on the goalie's necks there, yeah.
Fuck.
It certainly doesn't persuade anyone to go to a USPHL Premier game, other than for the meme or the novelty of, maybe it'll be 37-1 again, right? Like,
yeah.
And how many times is that going to work, right? So,
yeah.
If we're talking, like, just to use our example,
Mm-hmm.
We're a program that thankfully has very good support in terms of
in a small town, yeah.
In terms of our and that's something that the USPHL is going to struggle with just in general, because a lot of the teams are based in larger cities.
Yeah, like Pittsburgh Vengeance.
Exactly.
Who's coming to that game?
Columbus.
Yeah.
There are so many things to do in Columbus. Like even Columbus, like versus make the meme about the NHL and like there's nothing to do for NHL players, and that's why no one wants to go there. But like for a junior guy to live in Columbus versus a junior guy to live in Sulicote, Ontario, like there's nothing to do here other than hang out and go to the rink.
But the experience, right?
Exactly, right? And from a fan perspective, well, Columbus, as ridiculous as it sounds, they like have stores to go to and have restaurants to go to, and like that just doesn't exist in small towns for juniors. So what are they going to do? Well, Friday night, what are you doing? Well, we're going to the Bombers game on Friday night. Yeah. Right? So that unfortunately doesn't happen in the Prem because those just centers are so huge. They obviously have benefits of being in a large center, but for the most part, those teams that are kind of in the smaller areas tend, I think.
Junior hockey is built for small towns. Yeah. It's just the truth. Like you look at even the OJHL, great league, but most people, the scouts, there are scouts that go, but it's not. Those barns aren't filled. I think Trenton and Collingwood do a good job, but aside from that, I mean, a lot of these barns are not full, and it's good hockey. It's great hockey.
Yeah.
But just the center, it's the size. So you get up a little north here. Most of our barns when we go are pretty full. Aside, Fort Francis is a big rink to put a lot of people in, but this year they've been putting more people in it again. So it's cool to see like the small towns having success. Like in Saskatchewan, we talked about it with Kevin, right? That's one of the things he said. It's kind of the only show in town.
Exactly.
Right. So
Alberta, look at Brooks. Brooks is a perfect example. Like that's a tiny, like quote unquote tiny town.
Yeah.
That what's the show? Well, the Brooks Bandits are the show, or anywhere in Saskatchewan, whether it's Battleford. Battleford's not tiny. I think it's like 10,000.
But that's not huge.
That's not huge. And Battleford's the show. And Kindersley's the show. And Estevan's the show. And you go to, in the MJ's the exact same way.
Steinbach.
Or like Verdun. Like that Verdun is tiny.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of small towns around them.
Dauphin.
But if you were to walk into Verdun's rink, what am I, like you're walking into a rink that you would expect to have in a 30,000 person city. That's how nice that rink is. But it's all based around that MJ team and having the support that the Verdun Oil Caps have. And perpetually been a very good program. Yep. So that's just, I think there's a lot of correlation between community support and having a good squad. And obviously one plays off the other, because if you're dog shit, no one's gonna come and watch you. Yeah. So it's kind of the cart before the horse, or you got
real catch-23.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I think we've been talking here for good amount about the Prem and all the couple of interesting stories about it. Do you have anything else to add before we kind of cut things off?
I don't think so. I think that was a fun chat, fun to talk about that stuff, but also important, just to note what you're looking for. If you're going to try and play junior hockey, just do some research, talk to people, and if you have someone in your corner or someone that you know that's been in hockey for a long time, ask them, right? Someone that's played even recently, ask your buddies and just talk to people and get all the perspectives. I said this last time too, and it's that you don't necessarily want to always listen to the people that are telling you the things you want to hear, right? Because yeah, that sounds good sometimes if they're trying to take your money and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, the people that are telling you the things that are difficult to hear are probably the ones that actually care about you and your career at the end of the day, because it's those tough lessons that, make you grow as a player.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'd actually like to talk about that a little bit into next week's episode about maybe advisors and picking a program that is best for you rather than just listening to the yes men like you were saying.
Absolutely.
So that's a good preview for next week's episode. Yeah, we've been going on for over an hour now, so I think you guys are probably sick of listening to us. For Carson, I'm Austin, and thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pursuit Hockey Discussion, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.